You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only.
Now turn to part 1.
Hi, Altef. I'm your settlement worker, and I'm called Jenny. It's great to meet you. Welcome to our city. You'll love Toronto.
I'm sure I will.
I have some general recommendations. First, Toronto's a big place. A lot of people who come here choose to live in the West.
I see. Is there a reason for that?
Well, yes. There's a great market in the neighborhood. All the local people know about it.
Oh, that would be good for us.
And I understand you have young children?
That's right.
So another advantage of this area is that it has quite a few parks where children can play.
Oh, that's great. They really like being outside.
I actually know of an apartment in the area that's available. I'll arrange for you to see it, but first let's look at the floor plan, and I'll tell you what to check when you see it. This room here is the kitchen. Be sure to open the refrigerator.
To see if it's working properly?
Yes, and to make sure that there's no nasty smell.
Oh, anything else?
Well, it would be good to check the electrical situation. There's nothing worse than not having enough plugs. You'll need at least 4.
I'll look for those. What's this on the plan?
Well, now, that's the living room. And this is where you go outside to a small balcony. Have a look at the door lock. Be sure it's not broken.
I will. It'll be nice to have our own place to sit outside when we want.
Yes, it's very nice on a summer evening after dinner. And Altef, have a good look around the living room. The condition of the room is important because it's your main living area. Look at the paint in particular. It may be time to redo it.
I'll check that.
Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, Altef, this hall leads to the bathroom. When you look at that, do check below the sink. Often that's the place you'll find a leak. And the tiles in the bathroom should be in good shape.
I agree. Then this room must be one of the bedrooms, and this must be the closet. My wife wants a large one.
I'm sure. We all want lots of room for our clothes. You'll also want to look outside the bedroom window. It overlooks the street, and there might be a lot of noise at all times of the day and night. We're in a very busy city.
I see. That would be a problem for my wife and the boys too. I'll definitely remember to check that. Jenny, what other things are in the building?
You mean the facilities?
Yes. For example, where will we do our laundry?
With a building of this type, it's probably in the basement, but it doesn't say. So you'll need to check where it is. You know what's also really good to check for?
No, what?
You need to check that there's a garbage room on every floor. Then you don't need to go outside.
Right.
Well, that's everything for now. Good luck, Altaf. We'll talk later today.
Thanks for your help, Jenny.
Now turn to section 2 on page 3. Section 2. You will hear a woman talking on a radio program about a festival that is about to take place. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 18 on page 3. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 18.
I have in the studio with me Mary Smith from Yorktown Tourism, who is here to tell us about some of the events happening in our state capital over the next 3 weeks at the Spring Festival. So, Mary, what can we expect to see?
Well, it's such an exciting time to be in Yorktown. To kick off the Spring Festival, there'll be a huge firework display down by the lake, starting at 9 p.m. this Saturday, the 4th of September. Over 10,000 fireworks will be set off, all choreographed to music and broadcast simultaneously here on Radio Yorkie. You should get there early if you want to get close to the action. So, bring along a picnic and a blanket, as it could get chilly in the evening. One of the things that attracts visitors to the festival from all over the country is the amazing collection of flowers on show in Central Park throughout the festival. Special buses will run from the town centre to the show at 20-minute intervals for those of you who prefer to take public transport. If you're interested in seeing the latest in cars, from the fastest to the most expensive, then head over to the motor show at the Exhibition Centre from the 10th to the 15th of September. It'll be open daily from 9 a.m. until 10 p.m, so you can even pop there after work. Do you like photography? Then go along to Grow Your Imagination, an exhibition of photographs of famous gardens, which will be held at the Art Gallery from the 11th to the 19th of September. Come and be inspired by some of the world's most beautiful gardens. I've had a sneak preview of some of the photographs, and they are magnificent. If music is more your scene, then you should come and hear the Australian Philharmonic Orchestra performing Swing in Spring at the Concert Hall on Friday the 17th and Saturday the 18th of September. It's a celebration of dance music from the 1940s and 50s. There'll be 3 performances. Both evenings start at 7 p.m, and a matinee performance at 2:30 on the Saturday. So, get your dancing shoes on and head there. It's guaranteed to get your feet tapping.
Before you hear the rest of the program, you have some time to look at questions 19 and 20 on page 4. Now listen and answer questions 19 and 20.
Those are just a few of the attractions on offer. But for something a little different, you could try Balloons Down Under, which is the largest gathering of hot air balloons in the Southern Hemisphere. It's well worth it, because there'll be over 25 balloons of all shapes and sizes, which is a truly amazing sight. I'm also happy to announce that one lucky person will get the chance to go up in one of these balloons absolutely free. That's the prize in our special Spring Festival competition. It'd normally cost you $200, so it's not a bad prize, eh? I'm sure you all want a chance to win, so you'll need to fill out the entry form in today's edition of the Yorktown News. Don't forget to include your phone number. And send it to Radio Yorkie. Make sure your entry reaches us by 5 p.m. on Thursday the 9th of September. Then, to see if you've won, just check out the festival's website on Saturday the 11th of September, where we'll publish the name of the lucky winner. It's such a fantastic prize, so hurry up and get your entry in. So, there you have it. Just a few of the special events happening here in Yorktown over the Spring Festival. And if you'd like any more details about the festival...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear a student called Joel talking to his tutor about his research into farmers' attitudes towards new developments in agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26 on page 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Dr. Owen?
Come in, Joel. Right, so how's your research going? You're looking at how farmers feel about new technology in agriculture, aren't you?
Well, actually, it's more general than that. I'm looking at their attitudes to a variety of new developments in agriculture.
OK. Have you got a title for the project yet?
I was thinking of something simple, like farmers' attitudes towards the adoption of new farming practices.
That's possibly a bit too general. I think the title needs to be a bit more specific. What kind of farming will you be looking at?
Well, that'll vary, actually. But I want to speak to each of the 10 farmers in my sample. So I've chosen farms which are all in the same region.
OK. Well, I'd specify where they are then.
Right. I'll amend the title to do that.
OK. Is there any particular reason why you've decided to do face-to-face interviews? It'll be quite time-consuming, won't it?
Yes, and I did consider doing telephone interviews for that reason. Especially as it's unnecessary for me to actually see the places where they work. It's just that, in my experience, a lot of farmers don't like talking on the phone. So they'll be more likely to talk freely if I see them in person.
Yes, you're probably right. Good.
Then the first thing I want to investigate is how the farmers actually find out about new developments in agriculture that they might want to adopt. What sources they use.
Right. So how are you going to do this?
Well, I could make a checklist of sources of information for them to look at in advance, so they could tick off the ones they actually use. Things like farming magazines, farm product advertisements, television and the internet and so on.
It might be more useful to ask them rather than show them a list. A spontaneous response to one or two open questions might give you a more accurate picture.
All right, I'll do that then.
Now, talk me through some of the other issues you want to cover.
Well, there's the way the government communicates with farmers.
Right, well, one thing is, farmers complain that the government sends out the same information to all of them, whether they're poultry farmers or dairy farmers or arable farmers.
So they get all this information, but half of it doesn't actually apply to them.
Exactly. So you could look at that.
Right. Then I wanted to look at attitudes of British farmers to the cost of making any changes on their farms. According to articles I've read, farmers in Britain aren't, in principle, against investing money in new machinery and new practices, but they're actually just too busy to work out what the financial implications are.
Yes, and a lot of them don't seem to consider getting financial advice from their accountants about it either.
Right.
There's also been some research in Australia on sheep rearing practices. I can give you the reference if you like. Basically, it appears that the majority of Australian sheep farmers are willing to risk adopting new practices on the basis of just a few pieces of research. They don't usually wait until the evidence in favour of the changes is overwhelming. They're quite happy to act before then so they can get ahead of the game.
OK, I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30 on page 6. Page 6. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
We said we'd also look at some of the reading material I've been reviewing.
Yes, I had another look at Contemporary Farming Manual, which is clearly bang up to date. It covers a lot of things a farmer might want to know, but it's so dull.
Absolutely. I found it really hard going. And I can't imagine any farmer wading through it. There aren't even any decent pictures.
Did you have time to look at Running a Small Farm?
Yes, although I only read bits of it because, despite being entertaining, it wasn't very academic.
I know. And a lot of the information is either misleading or simply wrong. I'm surprised it got published at all. I don't imagine the farming press will rate it very highly.
You recommend agriculture and economics. I expected that it would be really difficult. The title's a bit off-putting. But I thought it was brilliant. So I've bought it.
Yes. Some people think it relies too heavily on farming practices in specific parts of the world. But the theories that underpin these are universal. And that's why it's a required textbook for anyone studying agriculture.
Right.
What else did you come across?
I borrowed How to Survive in Farming from the library. I thought it'd be interesting background, and I liked the informal style. But it turned out to have been written years ago.
Yes, and like everything else, farming fashions have changed, so it's badly in need of a new edition.
Can I ask you a question about...
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4 on page 7.
First, a bit of background. In recent years, people have been trying to exploit a number of different renewable forms of energy. One of these is wind power. Electricity can be generated from wind power by turbines, and at present, large numbers of these tall wind turbines are being erected in what are called wind farms. And the government is backing these as part of its moves towards sustainable energy production. But wind farms can be a problem for birds, because they can fly into the turbines and injure themselves. So wildlife experts have been doing a number of studies recently trying to monitor the effects of wind farms on bird populations and suggest solutions. And that's what I'm going to look at today. Now, before I look in detail at specific studies of different birds, I want to make some general points. It has been established that the species in greatest danger from the turbines are those which, irrespective of their feeding or patterns of migration, collect together in significant numbers, either on the coast or inland. And as well as that, birds are often vulnerable when they're setting off on long sea migrations, or when they're flying below cloud. So, in my opinion, efforts should be made to site new wind farms responsibly, and that means avoiding low-lying areas and narrow valleys between mountains or hills. Now I'd like to look at some specific studies. Firstly, a project looking at one particular species of bird, the vulture. This investigation mainly focused on how high the birds fly and the correlation between this and weather conditions. One of the weather features they were looking at was wind speed. But as well as that, another thing they considered to do with the weather was the amount of cloud. Now, what emerged from this study was that these vultures tend to fly lower at times when the wind is very strong. And of course, this means that more birds are in danger of flying straight into the turbines. Now, the project team suggests that to deal with this problem, a fixed camera should be set up to film any birds in flight near the turbines, so that if necessary, the turbines can be switched off. Another survey looked at the nighttime or nocturnal habits of several species of birds. This study actually had a slightly wider scope. It looked at risks to these birds near other installations, not just wind farms. These were mainly airports, which for obvious reasons tend to cause problems for birds. But the study also looked at what happened near tall structures such as radio transmitters. In the past, the most usual means of tracking the movements of birds at night were radar and thermal imaging. Now, the problem was that these methods were expensive because someone had to control the devices all through the night. And in addition to this, they weren't really reliable. So the researchers looked for an alternative that didn't need human intervention. And what they proposed as a priority was to create alarm systems that switch on whenever a bird passes a certain point, alerting monitors so that action can be taken. And then their second proposal was that findings should be processed to generate computer models, which can be used by wind farm planners and anyone else with an interest in reducing the number of collisions.